Hello, I just wanted to make a quick video about how I got my college degrees without going into any student loan debt. If you find this video informative or entertaining, please leave a comment, like, or subscribe. And I'm going to try to make more videos about finance related topics. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So my first, and if you see me looking down, it's because I have written some notes so that I can try to stay on topic. So my first degree was my associate's degree. It's a 2-year degree generally. And the way I went about that is because I wasn't a very good student in high school. I didn't have any scholarships or anything like that. And so I went to a community college. Maybe you don't know, but if you go to a community college, you can usually transfer to a 4-year college, and that way the first 2 years from the community college, your credits will transfer, but you'll end up paying a lot less. So it's lets people get a 4-year degree from a larger university, but the first couple of years you save a lot of money. So what I did is I went to a community college. I was working full time and my work schedule was pretty rough, so ended up not doing very well at that school. And I was actually put on academic probation, and then I decided to stop going to school altogether. And for a couple years, I stayed out of school and just worked. And a couple years after that, I decided to go back to school and finish up my associate's degree. I transferred to another community college, and I did a lot better there. And I got my 2-year degree. I think my GPA was somewhere around 3.0. And I was able to do that the first school I was paying, and then my parents were helping me a little bit. And then once I got academic probation, they didn't want to help me anymore after that. And, if I was going to waste their money. So when I transferred to the other school, then I paid for that out of my own pocket. And classes weren't that expensive. Again, it was a community college. I wasn't living there either, so there were no room and board fees. So it's just the classes. And so I paid for that 2-year degree basically out of pocket, between mostly me and then partially my parents helped me as well. And then once I got that degree, I actually didn't go to a 4-year school right away. I kept working, and I found a job at a company, and then a few years later that company went out of business, and my job went overseas to China. And because a bunch of jobs went to another country, my former employer applied for something called the Trade Adjustment Act. I think it was later changed to the Trade Adjustment Assistance Program. And I just looked it up before making this video. It actually doesn't exist anymore. But what it was a government program where you could basically go to school or get retrained for under a certain amount of time and a certain amount of money. It had to be, I believe it was no longer than 2.5 years, and then under $30,000, I believe. And what it was is they would train you, let you get a certificate, something like that, or even go to college, which is what I did. And as long as you jump through all their hoops and you maintained a good GPA, they would pay for your school, and you could also collect unemployment while doing it. So my degree was just about 2 years, so that allowed me to get my bachelor's degree because I already had my associates. I had to apply to a couple of schools, and then I was accepted by one, And then I went and I got my degree, and I ended up getting a 3.9 GPA, so I did very well, mostly because I didn't have to work while I was doing it. So I was just going to school and collecting unemployment for the entire 2 years. Didn't have to look for a job. That wasn't part of it. And then once I graduated that, then I had to, find a job, because immediately after you graduate, they cut you off. So then I had my 4-year degree, my bachelor's, for no money. Didn't have to pay for that. And then I got, actually, my next job was at a pretty big company, a pretty big healthcare company. And what I did is I got a sort of an entry-level job there, and then I worked my way up to a better job. And then I found out that they had a tuition reimbursement program. And as long as it was under 10 grand a year, and it was sort of related to your job, they would pay for your college. So I decided to go back to the same school that I got my bachelor's degree. I decided to get my master's degree in finance, and I went for 2.5 years, and I went, all 3 semesters. So there's fall, winter, and then I went summer too, just so I could get it done faster. And those classes were just under, they were something like $1,900 a class. So it was just under the $10,000. So I could take 5 classes a year and just sneak in under that $10,000. And a lot of companies do this, but just so you know, that if you do go through a tuition reimbursement program, there's usually some stipulations with the company. And the stipulations with my company were that you had to get, I believe it was a B average. And once you graduated, you also had to stay with the company for another 18 months after you graduated. So I did that. And then once I got my master's, my company announced that it was moving overseas. So I ended up finding another job, left that company pretty quickly, and didn't have to worry about that 18-month stipulation. So got my master's degree, then got out and left, and I didn't have to worry about it because they were letting me go. They were letting our department go, the building, all the people there. And it was, the onus was on them, not on me. So that's why I didn't have to worry about the 18-month, stipulation. Yeah, so if you're worried about going to school and you think the only way to do it is to go into massive student loan debt, there are options. I know that Trade Adjustment Act was great, and unfortunately it doesn't exist anymore, but there are other government programs where you can get trained. There are other ways for you to go to school and maybe not get all the money paid for, maybe not have it all paid for, but there are companies who will pay for a large chunk of it or the whole thing. You can also work while you do it. If you have no other option, I think that that's better than getting student loans, is to just work and go to school as much as you can. If you can only afford one class or a couple classes a semester instead of a full ride, instead of a full schedule, just do what you can do. I think that's better than going into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. Go to a community college like I did, get your first 2 years done there, And then, if you go to a 4-year university and you have to get student loans, at least 2 of those years, your bills will be a lot lower. So you're instead of 4 years on student loans, it's really only 2 years, and that makes it much easier to pay off afterwards. I think student loans are sometimes out of control. People are taking these loans out with little knowledge of how hard they are to pay back and how they never go away. That is the one debt where if you declare bankruptcy, it's still on your record. You still have to pay it off. So if you're young, you want to go to college, try your best not to have to pay, not to have to get student loans, because they really become an albatross once you graduate. And definitely don't defer them. Once you graduate, you're just making it harder to pay them off. The interest is still accruing. You're actually going to have to pay more, and it's going to be harder to pay off if you do that. So just my personal opinion, try to stay away from student loans. Do your best. Pay for school as you can. And if you can't pay for it, then, maybe don't do it right away. Put it off until you can afford it. Like most things, it's much more affordable and usually better for your wallet if you can pay for it when you use it instead of putting it on debt or credit card or student loan and then paying interest on top of that. If you found any of this information interesting or entertaining, please give me a like. Please subscribe if you want. Again, I plan on making more videos. And subscribe if you want. Leave a comment. And oh yeah, and if you do subscribe, just let me know that you did. And if you have any questions on anything else finance related, I'm not giving out financial advice specifically, but if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments and I will try to answer everything I can. Thank you. Take care.